Hello everyone, I'm Ilesh and we are talking about today about the design phases. This is the second lesson of our advanced masterclass courses and today with the design phases I will use this project which you can actually find in our starting screen in the software. So when you go ahead and create a new project, or when you start the software itself, you will see this project appearing here. I only made a minor tweak in this project. I just skipped all the unnecessary drawings now. So I have only the 3D and the 2D, but other than that, this is exactly the same project. So if you're willing to follow me and do all the same things that I do here in today's course, then go ahead, download that file and just simply repeat what I do. I think it's a good practice to repeat what we cover today. So about the design phases, there are a few things that I'm about to cover today. And first, I would like to show you how that works and what is it good for. I also would like to show you how you can represent the design phases. I mean, not just simply organizing things, but literally representing them on the documentation level in the 2D and in the 3D as well, and how the 2D and the 3D is connected together. And also I would like to give you a few practical advices when you are willing to document this as a part of your documentation in the end. And I will also show you something that is called drawing comparison, which is not necessarily only for the design phases. It's good for many other reasons, but it is directly connected in a way to the design phases as well. So I hope you hear me clear and everything is fine. If you have any comments during the show, please leave me a comment. I will answer all your questions at the end of this show. I see that many of you already waved and said hello to all to you. And so now I will just start working on this project. Well, actually, I will work on another project, which is I will just simply start with a plain new project, and I will just start with the basics, and then we will see how to apply those things in a larger scale project. And the good thing with the design phases is that it is tightly integrated into the software. So whenever you start working with it, you actually already work in a phase. So let's see how that works. When you just start a new project, and you say, okay, now I'm willing to draw walls and any sort of other items like doors, windows, roofs, slabs, and so on, then you just simply start doing that. You just go ahead and select, I don't know, a style that you would like to use, or you create your own styles, or you just simply customize what you would like to create, and then you just start drawing that item. Now, when you would like to, in the meantime, you can also change styles, and you can just create, I don't know, partition walls and so on. So even though now we might not realize that, but we are actually working in a phase, which is by default the existing state. That is, the software supports by default 3 or 4 different states, 4 different phases that you can organize, and you can tell the software in which phase you are willing to work in at the moment. But if you do not do anything, you will work in the existing state. Now, let me show you what sort of phases we should think about when we work with the software, and what are the basic reasons behind those phases. So the design phases in the software are something that you can find. I will show you in the interface with a dedicated tool set. And when you work with it, as I told you, that is for the existing status. What you create by default, everything lands in the existing design phase, which by default, well, we can say it represents the starting phase, or it could represent the survey data, or it could just simply represent the building, because sometimes you just do not do separate phases. In that case, you don't have to worry about anything. It just works fine with single projects as well. So you don't need to do anything if you do not want to create phases. After the existing phase comes the demolition phase, which is when you mark previously created items for demolition. The cool thing is that if you forgot to mark something, you will right away you will clearly see whether it will be demolished or not, because we will also talk about something that is called the graphical override, by which the software will automatically paint all the demolition marked items with red. I will show you soon. After that, the software is able to, well, this is actually a phase, but it is not something that you draw. It is just a consequence of demolitioning, removing things from the building. So the third phase that the software can represent is the phase where all the things that you marked for demolition are not even in the design at that phase. You won't see them. They will have either a hollow space, or they will just simply be removed. Like when you when you remove a wall, you mark it for demolition, then it will be completely gone. The software will automatically solve the wall connections, the door and wall and everything will be fine and fine polished. So you don't have to, I don't know, put extra wall filling or something like that when you remove a wall, because in the following phase, in the new construction phase, the software will fill up all those things, and then you can start with the new items that are for the new construction. Should that be a renovation or any sort of kind of like extension or something like that, whatever is built after these previous three stages, the previous three phases, the software will automatically treat it as a new drawing, and you can just start working with that as you would do in any other application. So the cool thing is that these are all fully integrated, and now I will show you how to switch between them and how to handle the content. But before that, let's just have a quick overview. So here you can see the chronological order of these things. Just as I mentioned, the first one is the existing state. The second is the demolition. After comes the after demolition phase, and finally the new phase. So these are all the three phases. You do not have to determine the time or something like that. These are just literal snapshots of the building phases, which you can represent, design, modify, and document. Okay, so let's go back to see what we had here. So now, just as I mentioned, the default phase was the existing state. If I move on to any other phases, now I wouldn't see anything because I didn't mark anything for demolition or anything else. So let me just fill this drawing a little bit up with extra details, and then move on to the following phase. So let me actually at least add the window. Like, for example, let me just move to, for example, to the next reference point on the left-hand side. So I will just align it nicely here. And then I will add a new door, for example, into this part of the building and so on. So this is just a very, very simple representation of a building. And now I decide that perhaps I would like to, I don't know, remove this wall. So what should I do then? And where are the design phase tools? You can find all those tools for the design phases here in the edit part of the ribbon. And there is this dedicated part for the project phases, the statuses, the filters, and the graphics overrides. I will cover all of these. And there is this little, we call this the view control bar. It's by default on, and you will see two parts of it, which is actually three, which is connected for the design phases. The first is which you can handle by simply saying that now I'm willing to design existing state items, and then I would like to design new constructions. But actually you don't have to use this if you just simply switch between the phases, because the software will automatically handle this. So I will skip this for now. And the following one is the filter. Now we can see all the phases now, but as we do not have the rest of the three phases, we can see only the one that we have designed. So if I would like to filter down what I see to the existing plan, then this is what I will see. It's exactly the same. So now if I say that I would like to remove this wall, instead of erasing it, which would remove this wall from all the phases, I will just select it, and I would say either in the local menu I have an option to decide where this goes to. So now, because this is in the existing state, I can choose only to make it to new, which will come in the future, and I can change it to demolish, which is now existing, but then the software marks this to demolition. So let's see how that goes for the window, for example. But now I would like to show you how to use this tool from here, which is exactly the same command, just from the ribbon bar. Well, in that case, you go there and you say, okay, I would like to change something to be demolished. And then I click on that item, and well, actually I can select multiple items to be demolished. And when I'm done, I just hit enter. Now it seems that nothing happens, but the software actually now registered those two items, this and this, to be demolished. So when I switch to the following status, to the following phase, which is the demolition plan, then I will see them painted red. And then you can see them represented in the 3D as well, also with a plain simple representation of the whole of this window, registering that is a part that will be fully removed, whatever was inside that hollow part of the wall. And then when I move on to the following phase, to the existing plan after demolition, I will see that those two items are removed. The wall is not filled yet, but as you can see, the wall connection is removed because that part is missing already. And you can see that the sides of this wall is also kind of nicely done with a kind of plaster or whatever comes there. And then when you move to the final phase, which is the new construction, you will see that the software will autofill the wall, make it ready for receiving any sort of other wall connections, or perhaps a new window. For example, in this case, if I just go here and I say I would like to place the same window which I placed before, but into another location, for example to this point, then now I have a version of this plan in the same exact project without switching to other drawings or something like that. In the same design, in the same floor plan, I have 4 different stages of this building. The final, where parts are removed and there is a new window installed. And then when I go back now, I'm going backwards in time. If I go back to existing plan after demolition, this part where the new window comes to, it is not existing yet, but there is a hole for the previous window, which was there. And if I go back to the demolition plan, I can see them marked. And if I go back to the existing plan, I can see everything as it was before I started the whole thing to renovate or change things and so on. Now this is the cool thing in it, that I don't have to, I don't know, make manual copies of this drawing and handle them in separate files or even in separate windows. Everything is inside this one logically organized ground floor plan, which I already have. I only need to decide what to do with these items, whether I would like to make them removed or I would like to handle the separate phases or not. So this is actually just a free choice. And later on, if you decide that, let's imagine I started this project, I don't know, 5 years ago, and now the client comes back to me and now they would like to make an extension to this building, then I can just pick up the same project and I can add the new phases. So this is nothing that I need to worry about at any time. You can change it. Now, what happens if, for example, I would like to change something? Let's say, for example, there is a partition wall which in the future will be at a different location. Let's say, how about this one? For example, I just would like to move this to a different location. Let's see what happens then. If I move this and let's say this will be in the future in 600 millimeters to the left. Okay, let's say just like that, I'm working in millimeters, okay? So now what happens, because it's automatically connected, the connection of course changes, but see what happens if I just moved it. The software changed the future as well, because those things that you do not mark to demolish, when you move them, those will be treated as continuously existing items all through to the end of this project life cycle, what we have here. So just as in reality, what we should do in that case, let me just go back one step. What we should do in that case, I just go back to the existing plan, and instead of simply moving it, I should literally remove it, literally destruct this wall by simply using the same tool, going back to edit phases and change to demolish this one. And then I need to go to the phase where I would like to install it. So now I jump all through the phases and I go to the new construction plan. See, now that's gone. Perhaps I also need to change the wall connection to make this clear. But then when I go back to the building and I start the wall tool and I use the same exact wall style, and then I create the other wall, for example, here. Let me just change this to the right hand side and so on. So now I have a wall in the future, but that's not the exact same wall, because in reality, very few times they literally move the wall, but they demolish the first wall and then they create a new wall. They build a new one. So now I have the proper the solution. Now going back to the first phase where this was not there, but the previous one was there, to solve this sort of connection, it is important to treat them as they would really connect in real life. So for example, if this wall is connecting to this wall, joining this wall in a T connection, instead of the default L connection, which is an equalized connection between the walls, I should just change that to T connection. So this is what I should do. I just click here, and then now when I select this wall, it is terminated here. So there's not an angled connection between the two walls, and this will reflect. This will be reflected in the future as well. So when I go back there, then this connection is also fine. So this is the cool thing about this, because let's just imagine that well, I went to the site, I made some sort of survey, I measured the walls, but I made a mistake, and then later, usually at the wrong time, I realized that, wow, I made a mistake, and I should move the complete I don't know, load-bearing wall, I don't know, only 5 centimeters to the top, but then this should be reflected in all the phases. Now that is cool, because this happens automatically. So when you just simply move the wall, just as it happened with this wall when I just moved it, I can make corrections in all the phases at one single time. So when I just click here and I say, okay, move it up, I don't know, this should be 50 millimeters. So just move it like that. Then now everything is, let me just undo and redo that. So let's see, I made that little tiny tweak, but now all those are reflected in all the design phases, in the demolition plan, in the existing plan after demolition, and of course in the final phase in here. So this is what we achieved with this one. Okay, let's just go back to the existing plan. So this is how you can make corrections, and it's very easy. Now actually, for this reason, to be able to make changes easily and being able to compare the different phases, there is also an all phase here, which will now, as you can see, makes all the phases visible, so I can make decisions whether this was okay or not. This should be moved to somewhere else. And for example, I just created this wall, but I would like to make it similar with the other two in length. So I just change the length and I make them align to the other one. So this is why the all design phase filter is good. And then now I can just go back and make it simple to see only one of the phases. So this is how it goes in a very simple situation, and actually this is what you will do in a more complex situation as well. So now what I will do, I will just simply load the that complex project that I've built for this one, and you can actually download it using the starting screen of the software. And so this is what we have here. Let me change this 3D so we will be able to follow the changes easily if I just use an axonometric view. And well, perhaps I can also filter down this to only the existing building, my part. Let me just rebuild the building in 3D. So now, well, I did not put these into the proper phases, but I mean in the proper filter, but let me just skip those parts now. And as you can see, now the building here is represented in the existing plan status. And now if I would like to remove things, and here's a practical advice for walls when you do not want to remove them fully, I will show you that as well. You should start working with those items and start marking them to demolition. So what I will do, I will just go here and say, okay, edit phases, change to demolish for perhaps this one, this one, this one, this one. I do not even need to, mark the doors to demolition separately, because if I remove the wall, obviously it will remove the openings as well, and so on. So now, and I mark this as well to demolition. And here's an interesting part. The software did not select the whole wall; it only selected one part of it. Let me show you how that works. But first, let me finish this. So if I click, hit enter, and now the software understands that these are to be demolished. And now when I go to the following phase where I can see the demolition plan, I can see them all becoming red, and those are also represented in the 3D. Now in this project, actually there are already things marked to demolition, so even if I wouldn't do anything, most of the things are already marked for demolition, so you can actually just switch between the versions and test it for yourself. But this is how you can change a drawing, parts of the drawing to be demolished. And well, let me show you the trick with this one. Now here, this is actually something that you can easily do by using a special subcommand of a wall. So let me just go back to the existing plan. And to see the whole building, I just rebuild the entire building block. But that's actually not necessary for what I'm doing here now. So what you see here is the selected wall, and it always has a context menu, and in the context menu you can find tools to edit the wall, this specific wall. So whatever you see here is for this specific wall. So this is why sometimes when you see a context menu, it's different from one item to another item, even if they are the same type, because this represents what you can do with this specific item. So what if I would like to do, what I would like to do, I would like to slice this wall into two parts. So I can tell the software that one part will be removed and the other one will be kept. So in that case, you can go here and use the edit submenu and say, okay, I would like to cut with another wall perhaps, which is intersecting this one, or I would like to cut this with a line. And then when I select the second one, I can actually pick the first point, and I can create an angled cut or a straight cut like this, whatever. If I would like to do that, I just click here as well, and then now the software separates this wall into two parts. Now still, because the original full wall was to be demolished, this and this is also marked for demolition. Let me just go to the demolition plan. So as you can still see, this is still to be demolished fully, but now I can make a correction. So whenever you are in a specific status, specific phase, and you see that, well, that was a mistake, I didn't want to do that, you can fix it. You just either use this menu here and say, I would like to change this to existing, or you can just use the context menu, and you can do the same if you just click here and say, okay, change this to existing, and then it will be represented the same as it was before. Now, there is one another thing that I would like to add up here. If you go back to the existing plan, many times when these things are still having a solid connection, you don't want to see this line here. So in that case, what you would like to do is to remove this line, and you can connect these two with perhaps a T connection. If you just click here and you click here, then the software removes that. And then correctly in the new construction plan phase, when you move there, then the software will remove this part, and of course it will represent the wall ending properly, just as it did with the previous one previously. But now this is something that I should mark to demolition, that as it was marked to demolition before. But as you can see, the wall ending is fine. It is as it should be if I do this with the wall. You can mark, as you could see, you can mark doors, windows, even columns, beams, even 2D items. So if you represented something with the 2D contour only using the drafting tools, those design phases are also attached to 2D items as well. So should you have a DWG drawing which you did not fully remodel, you can mark parts from the DWG drawing to be represented in the different design stages, the different design phases. And one specialty here with the 2D items, the special thing is with the dimensions. If you use any of those dimensions, now, as they are not standalone items, you can create dimensions that are not anchored to anything on your drawing, not locked to a wall or something like that. But by default, when you create a dimension, it is, at least with its two anchor point, it will be locked to the item that what it measures. So this brings up an interesting question. What phase the dimension will be in? Now the answer here is that when you create a dimension to an item, or even more interestingly, two items, like for example from this corner point to this wall's corner point, these are two separate items, and if they are in the same phase, they will disappear in that phase where you shouldn't see them. And then if the dimensions is linked to those items only, which are in the same phase, the dimension will be gone, and it will be disappeared if you create a dimension for two items that are both marked for demolition, for example. Then in that case, you won't see that in the new phase. But if it is anchored to an item which is in one design phase, and another anchor point is to an item which is in another design phase, then the software will continuously represent it, because it will not solve that situation automatically. There is no automatic solution to such a situation. So you need to make clear that you create dimensions to clear situations. Other than that, you will see that it will sometimes appear and sometimes not, which is, I think, quite logical. Okay, so I talked about the different phases. I talked about how you can switch them, how you can make corrections between different stages, and how you can add new items, and how you can even slice, for example, a wall into two separate faces, parts. And then now I'm here to talk about the graphic overrides. Now, why is that the software is by default representing things to be demolished with this specific style, with the red dash line, and even the filling is kind of dashed. So what makes that solid style, and how I can customize it if, for example, for my profession we use something else, or in my country, in my region, we are using different rules to represent these items. And now this is something that you can find either here, this is for the graphic overrides, or you can go to the ribbon bar and you can go to phases, and you can just select the same tool and see the icons are identical. So if you click here, then you can see this graphic override setting dialog. Now here you can see all the phase filters. So now we have 5 phase filters, all existing plan, demolition plan, existing plan after demolition, and the new construction plan. And you can see whether things that are in these phases, whether they are overridden in the new, in the existing, and in the demolished phase. So now let's see what happens here, because we actually have an obvious situation when the demolition plan represents demolished items overridden different as they were set before. So should that wall be originally, I don't know, purple by the settings here, it will be red because of the overriding settings here. So if I click here and I would like to check what the settings are, I need to click and select this option again, and then I go to the settings. Now this is actually a secondary dialog, so we are one step inside this setting structure. So what you can see, this is where the software stores that information, and this is actually where I can change it. So perhaps I fancy this color, and I fancy a different line type. I would like to use a different line way, or I would just like to represent this in half tone, which is half the color of this one. or I would like to override the hatch pattern, then I can do all these here. So let me just see what happened now. I just changed this to kind of a darker version of the previous red setting. And if I go here and I hit OK, and then I hit OK, and the software changes that immediately. So you don't have to update the drawing, you don't have to rebuild the 3D or something like that. The 2D will be automatically updated with the graphics overrides. So now this is what I can see here. So let's see a practical use for this. If I go to the all design phases, well, this was actually also a practical use, but I would like to show you another one with the all design phases, all design phases filter. Now, by default, in this filter, you will see everything represented with their original settings overlapped, which is sometimes okay, sometimes it's a bit confusing. So now you can customize how you can see things coming from different phases for better representation and to support your work to be able to determine whether that is fine or not. So if you go here and you select the graphic overrides and find that specific filter, which is now the all filter, so I should look for this one. And then I go to the overrides, nothing is overridden, just as I see here. And then now, okay, let's say I would like to represent everything that is new, blue, for example. Then I go here and I click in override, and then I select that specific blue that I would like to use here. Let's just go with well, which is the one that I should like. I will go with something like this, is the kind of greenish. So I won't confuse it with the selection color. So I just go with this one. Okay, I'm fine. I do not override anything else. I will just use a color. Okay, and then I go to the all phases, and then I say, okay, I would like to see the same color which I used before for the demolition, and that was this, perhaps this one. Okay, and I say okay, and then let's see what happened now. If I hit okay, then now I can see everything clearly. So everything now that is part of the new drawing is represented different than anything that is coming from the existing status and anything that is coming from the which was marked for a demolition. So this is how you can use the filters. Let me just go back here again. This time I use this one and say okay. Well, I made a mistake because this is not actually what I wanted. Now, what I see here, that when I am in the new design phase, everything in the all phase filter should be overridden red. This is not what I wanted, so I just disable this, no override, and then I mark the things that are to be demolished to represent in red. This is why everything is red now, which is kind of confusing because I used red for demolition. So I just made a fix, I change it back to no override, and then I go to demolished and override it, and I just use the same color, no, and okay, fix it with this one, okay, okay, and okay. And now this comes back. Well, actually, I think I should, now this is a time perhaps when I should update this view. So let me just switch between the views and we can see the result. Okay, going back to all and see the result. And yeah, well, I think there is one another thing that I forgot to set, and this is this here. I should not use an override in this one and this one, and yes, I think this is no, no override, yes. Well, I think this is the correct setting. I will check what I missed here, but I will show you the same thing in the drawing comparison. Okay, so going back to any of these phases will clear this up, and then I would like to show you how to create the documentation out of this, correctly color coded, and putting them next to each other on a layout, and how to handle that situation. So now if you go to the documentation, when you would like to prepare this whole thing for the final documentation part, you need to prepare a plot layout, what we call it, and this you can do here in the prepare plot layout, this one. And then I think I will go with an A3 size, which is fine if I use a 1:100 setting. I will skip the plot stamps, the title boxes for now. I would just like to use a plain white paper. So now what happens by default, if I would like to place a drawing here in a specific design phase, then I have two options to do that. The first option is that I switch to that phase on my floor plan, and then I switch back to the drawing, the white A3 size paper, and then I select that drawing, which is now is the ground floor plan, and I click and drag and to release, select the scale in, and I just place it perhaps here. Well, this represents the whole building structure in the existing state. I don't want to see the rest of the building, so I just use an offset here, so I just cover the rest of the part. So now if I would like to go and I would like to represent the demolition phase, then I switch to the demolition plan, and then when it is represented correctly here in the drawing, then I go back here and then I do the same thing again. This time I use the same scaling. I just place it next to the previous drawing, and then now I can see the same drawing, which is still in direct connection with the original phase. So whenever I make a change in the original phase, this can be updated. Remove that part from here. So now I have the same drawing in two separate phases on the same plot layout, and both are directly connected to the original sources. So should I change any of those phases, I can just click here and say refresh this. And this is one thing, but there is another way. I can actually just simply make another copy, use it in 100, place it. Let me just filter it, narrow it down to this part again. And then I can just change the properties. So I can just go here with this little pencil and I can say, okay, let's just change this to, I don't know, the new construction plan. And then it will give me a nice layout here and say, okay. And then now I have a version of this drawing in the existing, the demolition plan and the final phase. And I can even put the fourth phase in between, which is the after demolition phase. So this is how you can organize them, and those are actually properties of these kind of dynamic copies of the original part. Even further, you can actually just do this as well, remove this one and use this moving marker. You should not use Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V. You should use the move marker and use the mover copy, because this behaves a little bit different. But if you do that, this will make a dynamic instance of this one. And then you can go to the properties again, and you can just change the same thing. So you won't copy a group, but you will copy a dynamic instance of this one, and that has all the same properties. So you can just do the same thing. So I think I pretty much covered now this part. If I have forgotten something, or you are curious about something that I did not elaborate detailed enough, then please ask and I will tell you the details. But now I can move on to the final thing that I wanted to show you today, and that is the drawing comparison. The drawing comparison is something that you can find here in the documentation. Let me just organize this content here. So now we have the drawing, we have the layout, and we have the 3D building itself. And now a cool thing, which I did not fully finish yet, is that now you can just work with your drawing in any of the phases without having to worry about what happens with the layout. The layout remembers those settings, so whatever you do on your drawing, it won't automatically change anything here on the layout. I don't know, representing all in the same phase or something like that. It will remember all the settings correctly. So now moving to the final thing, to the drawing comparison, you should use the documentation drawing comparison tool. And here are 4 different options. You can actually compare 2 views to floor plans from the same drawing, from the same project. You can also compare 2 building situations. In the software you can actually handle, you can logically separate buildings. You can tell this is building 1, that is building 2, and then you can compare them in the software. You can also compare this with an external drawing. So perhaps your drawing is actually based upon an, I don't know, a DWG drawing, and then you can compare whenever the other designer makes a change on the DWG drawing. You can just you know, kind of link it into this this project and then make the comparison automatically. And what I'm willing to show you now today is the final, and that is the compare between two design phases. So what I do now, I just click here, and then the software creates a nice preview of what we can see here at the right hand side. And that I can select the first drawing, building, floor, and face filter, and the second drawing, building, floor, and face filter. Now you should select the same building and the same floor most of the time, and then you only need to change the face filters. And also here, this is also some sort of graphic override, what you can decide here, but in this case, for the specific reason, for being able to create a drawing comparison which is color-coded, showing the differences between the two drawings. So now what you will see at the end when I hit OK and the software creates that everything that is not changed, which is existing in both parts of the faces, will be represented with this color. Everything with the first drawing are blue, and everything with the second drawing will be represented in red. And also you can override how the wall fill is represented and how the opening scales are represented in the drawing comparison. So let's go with this one. And now the software actually creates a new drawing which is for this purpose. And then you can just place it anywhere. And this is actually, when you select it, the software will tell you that this is a group. But this is actually also a dynamic group in connection with the original sources. The software remembers what was the original source, so you can actually use the update drawing comparison whenever anything changes on the original sources. And as you can see, as most of the building was unchanged, and I did not remove or create new parts at these areas of the plan, everything is gray. And everything that was removed that is marked, everything that was removed that is in the situation marked with blue, and everything that was created afterwards in the second drawing that is represented red, because this is how I set up the drawing comparison. So this is a completely separate function. This is not useful only when you use the drawing phases. As you could see, there were 3 different other options. And it generates a nice drawing that you can use for, I don't know, add labels and text and document it in the final version of this project. And this is also part of your project. So now when I organize my drawings, these are all part of the same project. So when I save it and I open it up tomorrow, this is still there. This is also part of the project. So let me just check my to-do list. So today we talked about the how you can draw in the different phases and how you can switch between those phases. And also I talked about the connection between the 2D and 3D, which is kind of automatic. You don't need to do anything, but in worst case scenario, just as you could do at any time, if you use the 3D rebuild hammer, the software will automatically update the 2D and the 3D. Now there is one difference here with the general logic of the software. Now generally, if you use the software long enough, you understand that the software makes this 3D update transactional. That means whenever you do a change, it might be reflected fully in the 3D, but most of the times it is not, because when the software is generating large and detailed contents, then you would experience lags and breaks and stops during work. So to support the fluent and smooth workflow, the software lets you decide whenever you hit the 3D hammer to update the 3D. So there is a difference with the phases. Whenever you switch between the phases, this will automatically happen by default. So you do not have to hit the 3D hammer, and this is because of drawing and 3D consistency, which cannot be avoided anyhow else. Okay, so let me see whether you had a few questions here. I'm pretty sure you had. So let me just browse through what you have there. And part of wall for demolition. Yeah, well, actually, I think you had the question about someone had a question about how I mark a part of the wall to be demolished. This is what you can do. And someone in a previous session asked about how I can mark something like, for example, a column to be sliced half and then remove the top part and keep the bottom part. Now then you should do the similar trick what I did here. Actually, if I remember that there's a slice tool for the column as well, but if not, you can just put two columns on top of each other and mark one to be demolished, and then the software will represent it properly. So this is the same thing that should happen with the columns as well, and you can do the same thing with the beams as well. So I hope you could follow this easily, and I told everything in a clear and easy to understand fashion. And should you have any other questions later after this show, if you see it online when it is not live, then just write the comments below. I actually see that there is another question coming up. So the question is about whether the various stages can be selected independently and used in the quantity takeoffs. So far as I remember, I need to look for that. Please send me an email to my email address, which you can find on our website, or if you don't, you just send it to our partnership manager, and he will send it to me. So I will send you an answer, because I need to look for that. If I remember, yes, the software, when you do the quantity takeoffs, it will mark those things in the quantity takeoff, especially when we talk about the Excel files. Those will be all marked to be like in the demolition phase, new phase, and so on. This is what I remember, but I'm not pretty sure about that, so I will have to look after that. So yes, this was today's show about the design phases, and hope you liked it. If you do, then please like the content, and if you are not subscribed to our channel yet, please do, so you will get notifications about upcoming shows, just as this one, and new videos whenever we publish new ones on our YouTube channel. So I was more than happy to be able to show you this quite exciting topic of the software. It is rather new. It was introduced in the last year into the new versions of the software. So anyone using previous versions of the software and watching this show won't find these tools, but then go ahead and download the trial version, and you will be able to test everything for your need. And then you can give us your feedback, whether you had an extra question or something like that. So thank you again. This was the Design Phases design course, and I actually hope I did not forget anything to tell you. So it was a nice show. Thank you very much. Goodbye.